Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and apologies for not getting a release out on Monday. It's been a bit of a busy week for me on the family front. That included my sister getting married yesterday, which was a lovely day and a proud moment for me as a big brother. But anyway, putting my personal life aside, there are a few issues that are starting to crop up in my FPL team. Now, Gabriel only made it through 53 minutes at the weekend, and it's unlikely that we're going to hear too much from Arteta about the seriousness of the injury. Porro has only got me one clean sheet and 0 attacking returns since game week 5 when I bought him in. And Spurs fixtures do stiffen in a couple of game weeks' time. Staying with Spurs, Solanke has also been very absent for me in the 2 weeks that I have owned him, barely registering any expected goal involvements. And with lots of cheap forwards returning lately, I'm actually getting further behind on this Solanke spot in terms of overall rank. And Phil Foden hasn't quite done the business for me. And given he's a semi-premium differential with most of the other premiums returning, I do need to revisit my Foden plans. And to top it all off, I've only got one playing bench member in Wout phase and only one transfer to deal with my team for game week 10. So today's video will be all about navigating the next couple of game weeks with all these issues in mind, as well as looking forward to the upcoming fixture swings in game week 12 to make sure that we can fit in the most sought after assets. So remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, especially if you get any value out of the following content. Right, so we'll start off with Gabriel, as I suspect a lot of you watching this video probably own Gabriel or are at least very interested in what Gabriel owners are going to do with the injured, expensive defender. Now, as I said in the intro, he only played 53 minutes against Liverpool at the weekend and is probably unlikely to feature this coming game week. Now, I wasn't actually expecting any clean sheets from Gabriel over the next 2 game weeks. Now, that's not to say that Arsenal can't keep clean sheets in these next 2 matches, but they aren't typically the types of fixtures you'd necessarily target for a defender. Now, in game week 10, Arsenal come up against Newcastle away, and it's an away game with Newcastle probably end up scoring in that game. They're then away to Stamford Bridge to play Chelsea in game week 11 before their fixtures turn much nicer in game week 12 for Arsenal. Now, after the next 2 game weeks, so after game weeks 10 and 11, there is actually an international break between game weeks 11 and 12. And so there's about 3 calendar weeks before the fixtures turn nice for Arsenal. But there is also an EFL Cup match this week that hasn't yet been played, if you happen to be watching this video a little bit later in game week 10. And then there is the Champions League next week, sandwiched in between game weeks 10 and 11, which is also something that we need to consider. Now, lots of owners, or lots of Gabriel owners out there are probably going to end up selling Gabriel, meaning if I do decide to hold on to him, I will probably end up losing some value. And so what I'm trying to weigh up is whether it is worth holding on to Gabriel with this potential loss of value in order to save 2 transfers, assuming that I do want Gabriel straight back in when he is fit and ready. Now, of course, if we do find out that Gabriel's injury is like way more severe and he's out for, 3, 4, 5 game weeks, then I will look to sell Gabriel. But if it is just a short-term injury, I am seriously starting to consider whether I should just hold on to him and allow Wout Faes to come in off the bench for the next 2 game weeks. Now, why do I want to hold on to Gabriel? Well, a lot of managers out there are now starting to pick up that Liverpool may actually have the best expected goals conceded stats across the league for the first 9 game weeks of the season. And I think this is a reason that will actually drive a lot of Gabriel sales, as someone like Kanate, who is nailed, I'll say nailed. I bought Kanate in game week 3 thinking he was probably pretty nailed right there and then, and he has continued to play every game week since. He's about as nailed as you get. It's a very easy switch across with some money savings, and so I think a lot of that will be driving a lot of the Gabriel sales. Now, on my fixture ticker, if I just order by the expected goals conceded across the first 9 game weeks, you can see Liverpool top up here with only 6 goals conceded, and Arsenal have dropped all the way down to 6th, conceding about 9.5 goals across the first 9 game weeks. However, Arsenal's expected goals conceded stats do need some context. Now, in those first 9 game weeks, Arsenal have actually had to play 3 of those fixtures, so a third of their fixtures, with only 10 men on the pitch, having already received 3 red cards up until game week 9. Now, if we jump across to just the live site here, we can go and see that Declan Rice was sent off in game week 3, lasting 48 minutes on the pitch. So it was actually only 3 minutes into the second half when Declan Rice was sent off. And up until that point, Arsenal had only conceded 0.08 expected goals conceded. Now, if I jump across to Gabriel and bring up his list, now Gabriel's a 90-minute man, apart from last week where he got injured. And so his expected goals conceded stats are for the full 90 minutes of the match. And you can see that in this Brighton fixture, they actually ended up conceding 1.83 goals against Brighton, having only conceded 0.08 up until the 48th minute. So that is all being included in the expected goals conceded stats and is actually very misleading in terms of how good Arsenal's defense is when they manage to keep 11 men onto the pitch. Now, if we go and check out Trossard, who was sent off in game week 5, as you can see here, was sent off in the 52nd minute against Man City, which is not the best game to be trying to play 10 men with. But up until that point, so what are we, like 7 minutes into the second half here, Arsenal had only conceded, or not only conceded, but they had conceded 0.6 expected goals conceded, which is on the higher side, but of course it is Man City. Now, if we go and take a look at Gabriel's expected goals conceded stats by the end of the match for Man City, so this is just for the last, or as he said, off the 50 seconds, so the last 38 plus stoppage time. They ended up racking up 2.16 expected goals conceded. Now, for anyone who actually watched that match, when Trossard got sent off, Arsenal were winning 1-0, and they went to a 6-3-0 formation. Basically, just didn't even get out of their own third of the pitch, and just ended up, when they did get hold of the ball, kicking the ball long and just didn't even bother chasing it down. They did manage to come away with a... Oh, sorry, was it 2-1 at that point? Sorry, they were ahead at that point of the game. I thought it was 1-0, but okay, maybe it was 2-1. And they ended up conceding late in that match for City to nab the 2 points off Arsenal and get a point for themselves. But they went from 0.6 expected goals conceded right up to 2.16 due to only having 10 men on the pitch. And then in game week 8, not too long ago, Saliba got himself sent off after just 29 minutes of the game, which is extremely early on in the match. That leaves the full 60 minutes of normal match time, as well as the first half stoppage and second half stoppage time, which is probably about 4 or 5 minutes for each half. So they actually ended up playing probably about 70 minutes against Bournemouth with only 10 men. And at the point that Saliba got sent off, they had only conceded 0.03 expected goals conceded. Basically say that's zero. 0.03 is about as good as zero. But by the end of the match, playing with 10 men, they had gone all the way up to 1.82 excuse me, expected goals conceded. So Arsenal's total expected goals conceded stats across the league do very much need some context and do need these 3 red cards taken into consideration. And I think, well, it's usually pretty rare for Arsenal to get any red cards in their team. They are a pretty disciplined team. Having 3 in 9 game weeks is very out of the ordinary, but this is why a lot of managers might think that Arsenal's defense has actually dropped off. Now, if they have 11 men on the pitch, I still think Arsenal are the best defensive team in the league. And this is why I am starting to lean towards holding on to Gabriel, because I'm probably going to want him back because he plays an amazing defense and he's got some insane attacking threat when it comes to all of those set pieces. He is just a god in the air on corners and free kicks. But who would I buy for Gabriel if I was inclined to sell him? Let's assume that he's, say, out for like 6 game weeks or something when I do, which would force me into a sale. Now, I suppose I could look to go across to someone like Saliba and stay in the Arsenal camp, but Saliba does come with very little attacking threat, and so it's a very expensive asset to own for probably just a shot at clean sheets. And I probably wouldn't want to spend that much money on a Saliba. Gabriel would be right up there as well, with Man City putting up some very good expected goals conceded. They're a very strong defense, apart from the fact they do concede about 1 goal every single game, just almost without fail, apart from the weekend just gone. And I also do think that Gabriel is actually due a rest. Now, I did actually tip that he was going to get rested last time that the Champions League was around. I thought that Gabriel was probably due a rest then, and I did tip Rico Lewis to potentially cover for Gabriel at left back, which didn't transpire. But now that Nathan Ake is back fit and playing, he played 73 minutes in the last Champions League match against Sparta Prague, he is way more likely to be able to give Gabriel a bit of a break. And I could see that happening in game week 10 or 11, and I'm definitely not inclined to be jumping on a defensive player who could be rotated. I am the type of manager that doesn't mind jumping on attackers that might end up being rotated, which is actually why I do have Phil Foden in my team, but I will not go for a defender that is likely to be rotated, because that basically takes the clean sheets out of the game. So if I was to sell Gabriel, if I was to sell him this week, I'm probably looking at going quite cheap in this spot. So potentially someone like Aït-Nouri, who is being talked about quite a lot at Wolves, with Wolves coming up with a very nice run of fixtures. They're actually quite far down on my fixture ticker, because my fixture ticker does order by the delta, which is the difference between, in this case, it'd be Wolves and then their opponent, which will put them a lot lower. It typically always means that the top teams are near the top of my fixture ticker. But anyway, their fixtures are very nice. I mean, Palace at home, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, Everton away, West Ham away, Ipswich at home, Leicester away. I mean, these are just all amazing fixtures. And Aït-Nouri does come with a lot of attacking threat. However, Wolves have been conceding goals like crazy. This Oh, sorry, this isn't actually ordered by. I'm still ordered by expected goals conceded here, and you can see that they are fourth from bottom, having conceded 15.25 expected goals across 9 game weeks, which is not at all ideal. If I just do order this by, this is ordered by the next 6 game weeks, which you can see by the orange at the top of the ticker. Wolves are still relatively low down on my fixture ticker. Now, Aït-Nouri is on 4 yellow cards, and he could be suspended as early as game week 11 if he happens to pick up his 5th yellow card in the Crystal Palace match at the weekend. And given that I am also running with a very light bench, I'm not really inclined to jump on an Aït-Nouri if he's about to get suspended. I would also like to see Wolves start to concede a lot less chances before I go investing in someone like Aït-Nouri. Nottingham Forest would be another team that have been putting up some very good expected goals conceded stats. Where are they? Like second equal with Spurs, Villa, Forest, and City when you round to the nearest 0.05 expected goals conceded. I round to the nearest 0.05 expected goals conceded because what is 0.01 expected goals conceded? Probably within the bounds of error easily. So anyway, it's just to give you a bit more of a clear indication of how close these stats are, but Nottingham Forest is right up there with Spurs, Villa, and Man City. So a very good defensive unit so far, but their fixtures are about to turn. They've got West Ham at home this week, which is an okay fixture, but then they've got Newcastle, which is going to be tough. It is at home though. They then go away to Arsenal. That's a horrific game. I do not expect a clean sheet there. A great game in game week 13 at home to Ipswich, but then they run straight back into Man City away in game week 14. And again, because I am running with a bit of a light bench and not really much of a rotation option, I don't think I'd be buying into Nottingham Forest, even if I did have a bit of a rotating bench, to be honest, because I'd probably want to bench them in game weeks 11, 12, 14, probably 15 because it's away to Old Trafford. I mean, Villa are a pretty decent attacking team. I'd probably want to bench them in game week 16 as well. Maybe even game week 17 away to Brentford, who have been attacking like crazy. And then Tottenham in game week 18. I mean, this is not a great run of defensive fixtures. And so all of this is compounding together to make me think that I just really do want to hold on to Gabriel and potentially just play Wout Faes off the bench. Now, if you are watching this video a little bit later in the game week, it is still mid-game week and the EFL Cup matches are tomorrow morning. And so this video won't actually have any of my actual decisions being made. I'll put those forward in the team selection video later this week, which will also include my game week 9 score and rank. But this is just the issues that are in my team and the thoughts that I currently have. So next on the list is Solanke, and we'll probably cover off Pedro Porro at the same time as they do share the same fixtures. Now, Spurs fixtures from game week 10 have Aston Villa at home in game week 10. Not great from a defensive standpoint. Probably still a little bit tricky from an attacking standpoint as well, as Aston Villa's expected goals conceded are right up there. They do have a great game in game week 11 at home to Ipswich. Then they're away to Man City though. Super tough game in game week 12. Fulham at home. Fulham have actually been playing pretty well this season. So have Bournemouth. That's an away fixture. And then they have Chelsea at home. Okay, great fixture against Southampton. Happens to be away in game week 16. And then they have to play Liverpool at home in game week 17. And so Spurs fixtures are definitely stiffening over the upcoming run. Now Solanke, I have both Solanke and Porro in my team. Solanke has been largely absent in the last, 3 matches in terms of expected stats. I've actually only sat down and watched the last 2 full 90 minutes of Spurs, and Solanke has just not been involved at all. Uh, he is, yeah. He's actually a big part of the reason why my overall rank has been suffering over the last couple of game weeks, because most of the other forwards that people have gone with that aren't Solanke have all been returning and all looking quite good. So Solanke is on the chopping block. Whether or not I get rid of him this week is still up in the air, but what would be the most likely assets that I'd be looking at? I probably, well, the three top downgrades in terms of performers in the league, first of all, would probably be Chris Wood, who's absolutely been turning it on. Great for a Kiwi to be in the Premier League. I think he's the only New Zealander in the league. He's been doing amazing for Nottingham Forest up front, but we've already just covered off Nottingham Forest's fixtures, and they are pretty tough from both a defensive and an attacking standpoint. I mean, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Man City across that run of 11, 12, 13, 14. It's not really what I'd want to be buying into for Chris Wood there. Raul Jimenez has also been turning my head. However, Fulham's fixtures do turn a lot tougher in game week 13. Where are they on my ticker here? So good attacking fixture against Brentford at home. Brentford have been shipping goals, or at least chances and goals, left, right, and centre. Palace away. Palace have also been pretty leaky over the opening run of fixtures, and so have Wolves. So the next three fixtures are amazing for Fulham. But then from game week 13, it's Spurs away. Okay, Brighton at home in 14 is all right, but then Arsenal at home, Liverpool away. Great fixture against Southampton at home, but then it's followed straight up by Chelsea away. I don't really want to be invested in Fulham in game week 13. And I already have Smith Rowe in my team, who I did bring in 2 game weeks ago for Antoine Semenyo. Well, I'm actually kind of got my fingers crossed that Semenyo ends up getting himself his 5th yellow card. He's also on 4 yellows, gets himself suspended and serves that suspension before game week 13. So I can easily ditch Smith Rowe and go straight back to Semenyo with him having served his 1-match suspension. So I don't really want to be jumping on Raul Jimenez just for the next 3 fixtures to end up doubling up on the Fulham attack, simply to then want to divest away from them in a few game weeks' time. So there's really only 2 players that are cheaper than Solanke that I'm potentially looking at. One would be Danny Welbeck from Brighton. However, their immediate run of fixtures is not great. They are, what is this order by XGC? I'll just reorder it by the difficulty of fixtures here. So Brighton, what's that, 13th on my list. They have Liverpool away in game week 10. I don't really want to be buying Danny Welbeck for that. Followed straight up by Man City at home in game week 11. I don't really want Danny Welbeck for that game either. Then in game week 12, Brighton's fixtures do turn for the better. Bournemouth away, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, Palace at home, West Ham away, Brentford at home. These are all great attacking fixtures from game week 12 for someone like Welbeck at Brighton. But of course, that's not until game week 12. The only player that is doing relatively well at the moment, who also has the fixtures, is Cunha at Wolves, who could be worth a shout. Wolves are scoring goals, and like I said, they do have a great run of fixtures, but I haven't sat down and actually watched a full 90 minutes of Wolves from a scouting perspective. I'm pretty sure I have watched I watched Chelsea, I think, batter Wolves in about game week 3 or something, but I wasn't really looking out for any of the Wolves players, and I don't really know what I would be buying into for Cunha. So I'd probably want to sit down and actually watch a bit of him before I try to ditch Solanke for someone that I am completely just not across. But full disclosure, if you hadn't caught my videos last week, I had already floated the idea of looking at Nicholas Jackson for this Solanke spot. having watched Chelsea at the weekend, Jackson is still looking very good. And I did say last week that his finishing looks like way better than what I saw in the season just gone. I mean, humans are very rarely in their final form. Players are always improving over time, and Nicholas Jackson's finishing does look like it's on the up and up. And with Chelsea's run of fixtures turning very nice from game week 12 as well, could be looking at a double up of Palmer and Jackson from game week 12, which is Leicester away, Villa at home, Southampton away, Spurs away. So Spurs pretty leaky. It is red on my fixture ticker, but they are a bit of a leaky defense. Brentford at home, Everton away, Fulham at home. I mean, these are pretty good run of fixtures for Chelsea, but I cannot be investing in Jackson until about game week 12, as I don't really fancy doubling up on them for Manchester United at Old Trafford with Ruud van Nistelrooy now currently in charge at the moment, while we're still waiting for the new manager to take over. And then Arsenal at home in game week 11 is not a great attacking fixture at all. And so Solanke is on the chopping block, but probably staying in my team for at least the next 2 game weeks. Just fingers crossed he can actually pull something out of the bag against Aston Villa. And if not them, then he's probably going to need like a brace or better against Ipswich in game week 11. We are putting quite a lot of faith into Solanke, who isn't really getting amongst the expected goal involvements. Pedro Porro's also good run of fixtures are also expiring, is similar to Solanke's. And I'm already not very happy with Spurs' clean sheet potential, which is something I have been talking about all across the last few game weeks. Now, I did say that I was still happy to hold on to Pedro Porro because his attacking threat is outrageous, or was outrageous in game week 8 the last time, which is when I last commented on it. In game week 9, he was still getting forward and still attacking, but I could probably find just as much attacking threat from a cheaper defender. I mean, maybe Aït-Nouri, probably be able to keep up with. Aït-Nouri might be able to keep up with his attacking threat. Probably has a similar similar likelihood of keeping clean sheets, as Wolves do have a lot better fixtures than Spurs. And Spurs are very leaky. Porro is at least playing though, and I do know what I am getting out of Porro, and I could definitely see them muster a clean sheet and potentially an attacking return in the same game. But he is definitely on the chopping block, but it looks like I'm probably going to end up having to hold him for the next couple of game weeks. And then finally, there is Phil Foden. Now, Phil Foden, I think, is clearly first choice in the City 11. But does that mean he's going to get rested in either the Bournemouth or Brighton fixtures in order to play him in the Sporting Champions League match, which is sandwiched in between, as Pep might end up prioritising him for that Champions League match? Or will Foden play all 3 fixtures before the international break, which includes that Champions League game between game weeks 10 and 11? Now, Pep was working with an incredibly light bench in game week 9. There was no Doku, no Grealish. He only named 7 substitutes, 2 of which were keepers, Ortega and Carson. Stones was on the bench, who's coming back from injury. Ake was on the bench, who's actually only played that 73 minutes against Sparta Prague in the Champions League, last Champions League match. Gundogan, who's the only man who's actually been regularly starting for Man City, on the bench. He's the only regular starter that was there. And the last 2 players were O'Reilly and McAtee. So I guess there is the potential that Foden is forced to play potentially these next 3 matches. pending injuries to players like KDB and stuff who could be coming back over the next couple of game weeks. Now, we'll obviously need to wait for more information and any injury updates from the EFL Cup matches tomorrow. Fingers crossed, none of my other players in the team end up picking up injuries in these EFL Cup matches, because if that is the case, I only have one free transfer and I might be lining up a hit for game week 10 if that does end up transpiring. So I'll be back on Friday with a team selection video that will also cover my game week 9 score and rank. But all right, well, that wraps up this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time.